Welcome back to another edition of Down to the Wire. Happy David Ayers Day to you and everyone that is watching. I'm obviously alongside of my NHL analyst, Nolan Thode. Just 1 year ago, it's crazy to think that we could arguably say that David Ayers, that moment was probably the best thing to come out of 2020, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember that day vividly. I was at work and I saw the Leafs had a game against Carolina. And, being from Toronto, I kind of keep up with the Leafs even though they're not my favorite team. And I just remember it got busy at work, and all of a sudden, I see all over Twitter, all over my Instagram, just Leafs fans saying, "Oh, I'm done. I'm done." I'm like, what the heck? You lost a regular season game. What's the harm there? And then I looked more into the story and saw the David Ayers story. And, I think just hockey fans, everyone kind of got a kick out of that. Even Leafs fans looking back on it a year later.
Getting into the news here, we actually have breaking news, and this story is still developing. Artemi Panarin is taking a leave of absence from the New York Rangers due to some Russian politics that are coming out, that are resurfacing. The news is that this girl is coming out and saying that she was allegedly assaulted by Artemi Panarin 10 years ago. So that would have made, so this woman was 18 years old at the time. And that would have made Panarin 19 years old by, according to my math. And to me, we see these stories resurface all the time, whether it's celebrities or hockey players. And, it's crazy to think that people wait this long to report the story. But then again, we have to look at it from both sides, right? So from the woman's side, yeah, sure. It's really hard to come out about cases of assault, and it's hard to speak up about that. And, there are still people advocating to this day that, with assault and rape and stuff like that, like it's very hard to speak up about your past experiences. So when you get the chance to, sometimes it is 10 years in the past, and to at least, get that word about, get out that word that, this person assaulted someone. It feels good for it feels good for that woman to speak out about her troubles. But then again, waiting 10 years in the making is definitely a long time. However, I think the main reason Artemi Panarin is taking a leave of absence, from what I'm reading on Twitter, is that he just wants to make sure his family is safe from the Russian government. And that's really the main issue here.
Yeah, like you said, in terms of, just assault and abuse, it is hard for, victims to kind of come out into the public eye and speak upon it. I'm not sure how, the timing was with it coming out now. It's just super unfortunate, for everyone involved. I'm going to respect the victim and believe her until, Artemi Panarin is proven innocent. I think, a lot of more extensive, they're going to take a look at this and figure it out, because, it's something that the league doesn't want, their players, being viewed as abusers. I remember the Patrick Kane case. That was super big for him, and, took him off the cover of NHL 16, kind of wrecked his career for a little bit, but he's been able to recover. And then, just the situation with the Russians, it's such an interesting thing, interesting dynamic in the NHL. I remember, there was a period of time where in the draft, general managers would kind of, wait on Russians a little bit, just because, everything that's going on in their country, and also, scares of them going back to the KHL. So, just hoping for the best and hoping that Panarin, does stay safe throughout this time.
Getting into the thick of news here, the better news, we should say. So on Monday night, we learned about the huge Texas winter storm that they went through, or they are going through, which postponed various Dallas Stars games. It postponed the Monday night game as well as the Tuesday night game. And personally for me, I didn't have this on my NHL 2021 season bingo card.
Yeah, we're used to seeing these games postponed due to, protocols and such. However, with inclement weather, it's just such an interesting thing and how it's impacted the NHL. Typically, games don't get canceled too often for, weather delay, because the NHL is played indoors. But with what's going on in Texas right now, it's super understandable for the Dallas Stars to, be postponing these games. They're playing tonight, so hopefully the Stars are able to get back on track, and I'm just wishing that everyone's doing okay in Texas.
Alexander Barkov's goal Monday night marked his 420th in his career, which he moved into sole place of second all time in Florida Panthers history. And as a player, but as a fan, you and I can both agree that we grew up with Barkov, and he is turning into this real stud of a player. And certainly for me, I can't wait to see him play in the Olympics next year.
Yeah, Alexander Barkov for the longest time kind of had the tag of the most underrated player in the league. I think, all of that underrated hype began to, get him some coverage. And then obviously, now that he's the captain of the Florida Panthers, pretty much every casual fan should know who Alexander Barkov is. He's a thrill to watch. Early in his career, he was infamous for, he had some good shootout goals, I remember, in his young career. But now, he's just has such a complete game. Potential Selke candidate year in, year out, just does everything on both sides of the puck. It would be interesting to see him play for Finland because, we haven't at an Olympic level yet.
And as well, I should mention, he's not even playing with Jonathan Huberdeau as part of his wingers. He's playing with Anthony Duclair and Carter Verhaeghe. And, to me, it speaks levels just how well either that line is doing altogether or just how well one player can perform and kind of boost up that line. Those wingers are very underrated, in my opinion. I'm glad to see Duclair have success this season. And in my opinion, Carter Verhaeghe kind of was underutilized in Tampa Bay. And, when you're put alongside of Alexander Barkov, you kind of get to see what that player's potential is.
No, exactly. I think it's good for both Verhaeghe and Duclair. Similar to the Oilers where, Draisaitl and McDavid used to play together all the time, 5-on-5. Barkov and Huberdeau were kind of just set, Barkov up the center and Huberdeau on the left side, interchanging with like Dadonov, Mike Hoffman, guys like that. But now they're kind of splitting them up, and it's been very good for the Panthers. They've been very successful with that this season, and it is due to, these guys being able to step up. And I agree with your point on Verhaeghe being underutilized in Tampa. It's just such a team. It's such a tough team in Tampa, where there's so many roster spots that are already, kind of locks. So for a guy like Verhaeghe to, go and get more of an opportunity in Florida, and now he's thriving with it, it's nice to see.
I think Florida is legit. I really think that what I've seen out of them recently, I think they could be a really tough out this season. And when we talk about playoffs in Florida, usually that doesn't match. Usually they're, a quick first round exit, but this season, they're second in the Central, 11-3-2. Their last 10, 6-3-1. This team is legit. And I think they'll be a nice, challenge, and they can make a run for the division lead. And usually preseason rankings, we had Tampa Bay running away with the division.
Yeah, I think, it really goes to show, besides, maybe Detroit and Ottawa the last couple of years, how strong the Atlantic is, in a regular season format. Boston, Tampa, Toronto, those are kind of the top three. So it is difficult for teams like Florida and Buffalo and Montreal to, kind of crack in. But now that with these new divisions, Florida's seeing a lot of success, and, being able to be second place in a division is something that Panthers fans have not able to, call themselves for in the last little while. So it's nice to see.
And also, just to mention, I guess the Panthers fans, I don't even know if they have any, they're going to be very, I guess, miserable when we do go back to the old division format and the wild card next season. Because I think this new division thing is only going to be a one and done this season.
Mm-hmm. Their division specifically is kind of like the more wild card division, with the North, East, and West divisions, you're kind of, expecting the standings to be what they are right now. But, with the Central, Chicago's even in the mix, Columbus, Florida, Carolina, Tampa, all these teams, even Dallas, there's just so many teams who could make a run. And I think Florida, early in the season, they had the benefit of not playing a lot of games, so their record looked better than it was. But now that they've been given a, bigger sample size, we're actually, seeing that Florida is a legit team this season.
Like I mentioned at the top of the show, the Leafs kind of choked against the Canes 1 year ago. But, 1 week ago today, they choked a 5-1 lead against the last place Ottawa Senators. It was a 5-1 lead. Personally, I don't know how you can choke a 5-1 lead. The mistake there was John Tavares sending a flip pass or a lob pass right up to the middle on the tape of Nick Paul, and bang, bang, back of the net. Shorthanded goal, might I say, with 10 seconds left in the second period. That was a huge goal for Ottawa. That was the TSN turning point, because then they come out of the third period and they have this mojo going. It's like momentum shifted in between periods to Ottawa's side. They're on the penalty kill. They score another shorthanded goal. Now all of a sudden it's 5-3. And, even Sheldon Keefe said, it was as bad as he's ever felt about having a 5-2 lead. The warning signs were there for the Sens to come back. And personally, I don't know why he didn't call a timeout.
Yeah, I think it was just a poor, execution. They went up 5-1 and things just kind of got a little sloppy, with their play. We're used to seeing this Leafs team, especially this season, kind of play a whole complete 60-minute game and not have these, blown leads in the third period. I think it's just, I'm with you on that. I'm not really sure how you blow a 5-1 lead, especially against an Ottawa team like this. An Ottawa team, they scored 6 goals this game. They might not score 6 goals in a game for the rest of the season. There's not a lot of heavy scoring. Maybe if it was the other way around, Ottawa was suddenly up 5-1, I could see, the Leafs have enough talent to make that kind of comeback. But, I think, credit to Ottawa, they came back from 5-1. And like you said, with the Nick Paul goal late in the second, I think that was a huge momentum shifter and, really allowed them to go back into the locker room and, analyze things. Just from my experience playing hockey, it's kind of easier sometimes to play, when you're losing than play with the lead, just because there's so many signs and superstitions there. So, unfortunate for the Leafs, but it seemed that they were able to pick things up for the rest of the week.
This also marked Ottawa's first win in franchise history, trailing by 4 goals or more. And what a way to do it, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And against Toronto, Senators fans don't have a lot to cheer about this season, but I think they'll be, remembering this one for a long time.
Another point I should mention is that Carolina scored 6 straight goals to defeat the Blue Jackets 7-3. The Jackets were leading 3-1 before Carolina exploded.
Yeah, Columbus, their team that kind of needs to win those games 3-1, needs to shut you down. But Carolina seemed to find a way to, get the puck in the net after being down 3-1. And Carolina is just one of those teams where, they can score 5 goals in a period sort of thing. Not many teams in the league can do that, but they have the talent, 4 lines that just kind of all can put the puck in the net. And then credit to their power play as well. I'm not sure how many of those 6 goals were power play. However, I think we need to be looking at Carolina for one of the best in the league in terms of just the talent that's on the ice.
They are averaging 3.69 goals for per game. So, to your point there, they are legit in my opinion.
No, exactly. And they've been legit for a couple years now. A few years ago, the Storm surged. They broke into the playoffs, made a conference finals run. Last year, they beat the Rangers in the qualifying round. But I think now, Aho's kind of butting into, being an all-star, and same with Svechnikov. I'm not going to call any of these guys superstars yet because I think they have a little bit more to prove. However, just the collection of players on this Carolina team provides for a very solid team.
There are a couple of players they didn't mention there. I should mention, I got the stats right here. There was 12 players with at least 1 point during that 7-3 shelling. Teuvo Teravainen and Brock McGinn each had 4 points. So it was a great team effort by Carolina.
No, exactly. When 12 players are all getting a point, it's huge. They scored 7 goals, so obviously a lot of guys are going to get a point, but it just does prove the depth of the scoring on that Carolina roster, and that it's not just, Sebastian Aho, Teravainen, Nino Niederreiter, each and every night. They're getting goals from everywhere.
It was announced on Tuesday that Cole Caulfield is expected to turn pro in April after his season with Wisconsin is done. Currently, he has 37 points in 24 games, and he is leading the team in points and goals with 19. Points, obviously, that's 37, and goals, which is 19. In my opinion, we saw Paul Byron already on waivers. So who's to say that, Cole Caulfield Cole Caulfield can replace Byron. We also saw Arturi Lehkonen be a healthy scratch. So, I think there is some move within the Canadiens' bottom six to fit Cole Caulfield. However, in my best opinion, I think that for him to get better ice time, it's best to sit him in Laval.
Yeah, I think, going from Wisconsin straight to the NHL for Cole Caulfield, he's a smaller player, so I feel like, he's not gonna, I mean, by all means, he's talented enough to come in and be a, impactful player. However, with smaller players, it takes them a little bit of time to kind of, find their game in the NHL, because things that they relied on more when they were in juniors and their skill and speed, they need physicality now. So I think, putting him in the AHL could be a good thing for his development, just in terms of the ice time. However, Montreal, they might be needing some goal scoring late in the season, and it'd be interesting to see if he can crack the lineup.
Well, speaking on that development point, Trevor Zegras, it's Zegras time, baby. He has been recalled straight up to the NHL roster. He didn't have to go to the taxi squad or anything. The Anaheim Ducks have recalled their top prospect, or, we're waiting on Jamie Drysdale. But Trevor Zegras, he has been recalled and should make his debut tonight against, I think they're playing the Arizona Coyotes, I think. I could be wrong. But I'm very excited to watch Trevor Zegras. I know I will most likely have that game on my computer.
Yeah, Trevor Zegras, as a fantasy owner, I'm glad to have him on my team. But I had him early in the season because, I expected him to crack this Ducks roster. I was surprised that he went to the AHL because he had such a phenomenal, World Juniors. And, that Ducks roster isn't the deepest in terms of scoring. I'd put money on it saying that they probably average, one of the least amount of goals per game in the NHL. And I think they were kind of just fed up. Are they last in the league?
Yeah, they're last with 1.83.
Yeah, if you're scoring less than 2 goals per game, it's going to be tough for you to win anything. So I think, bringing in this top prospect, it is the right time. He got a little bit of a, transition to pro, at least playing in the AHL, and he did very well there.
9.8 games.
I think I heard somewhere that Drysdale might be following him. So I think, for the Ducks, I think this is a lost season in terms of, they're not going to win the cup this year. So maybe getting Drysdale and Zegras, this experience, while they're still young, could be a positive thing for the Ducks' future.
Personally, I wouldn't count out the Ducks quite yet, because if we look in that West Division, there's 5 teams.
It is a tight division.
Tied for that 4th position, and Anaheim's only 2 points out. So this game against Arizona is a must-win because Arizona is tied with LA with 17.
Yeah, for most teams, if you're averaging 1.83 goals per game, you're not going to win games. But when you have John Gibson in net, he's got 3 shutouts already on the early season. He gives you a chance night in, night out to win. So he's got to keep up his phenomenal play if the Ducks are going to push for that 4th seed.
Building on that kind of defensive mindset you mentioned, on Tuesday, I saw a very defensive series for the New York Islanders against the Sabres, both on Monday and Tuesday. And personally, with the hiring of Barry Trotz there, that's just a classic Trotz. I mean, he has that defensive mindset. They only allowed 1 goal in 2 games. So obviously, whatever his coaching perspective is working off. It's paying off.
Yeah, I like both the Islanders and the Sabres, so it was a tough set of games to watch, but I actually did watch both of them as well. With the Islanders, I think, they're a team, if they can get out and jump up to a lead, it's a very tough team to come back against. I mentioned this earlier, when we talked about how Washington came back against them. You just don't see that happening too often. They're just a shutdown team, and they all sort of buy into Trotz's system. And I think, the Islanders, night in, night out, they're a tough team to play. And if they're going to get goaltending like this from Sorokin, maybe not every night, but he was very solid in his, first shutout. And, Varlamov, we already know what he can do night in, night out. I think the Islanders, in that East Division, are a threat for the playoffs as they have been the last 2 years.
And the Monday game, I should include, had a 3rd period shutout. The Islanders didn't allow a single shot in that 20 minutes of play, which is just incredible.
No, it is crazy, just not a single shot in the 3rd period. It's a very difficult thing to do. And, my dad is a Sabres fan, and he made a point that I agreed with. There's too many perimeter players on Buffalo. They don't really have that kind of guy who's just going to stick his nose in, get the puck deep, get things on net. They just kind of have, more finesse players. Jack Eichel likes to, have space. Victor Olofsson, he can get the puck and snipe it when he gets it, but, he's not going to bully anyone out there. So I think Buffalo is lacking, that kind of, gritty guy that can just, put himself in front of the net. You even see Ristolainen on the power play. He goes in front of the net sometimes. And when you have a defenseman in front of the net, it just kind of shows how there might be something lacking on that Sabres roster.
And, getting into the Sabres talk here, like there are some major issues there, because now they're looking at scratching Jeff Skinner, who has 1 point in 16 games. Or maybe 1 goal. I don't know, but the guy's been irrelevant this whole season. And, he's really there. He got the $9 million contract and he has not showed up for it ever since. And, it's crazy to me to think that he went from, a first line caliber player to now playing fourth line minutes to almost now being on the bench.
Yeah, it's super interesting because he had a 40-goal season. He earned that $9 million contract. And, just watching Sabres games this season, he looks like a completely different player. He got 40 goals that season, but even in the games he, didn't score, didn't get a point, he was still an impactful player, getting chances on offense and, creating things. But he just looks super lost out there. And, with 1 assist in 16 games, it's just been unfortunate. And, he seems to have lost a lot of confidence, and that's tough to see in any player.
And as well as Buffalo can't even move that contract because he has a no move clause. And, people are calling for Jack Eichel to get traded. And, when you're 6 years into your NHL career, Connor McDavid has had more success than Jack Eichel, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Because, the Oilers made the playoffs and Jack Eichel hasn't even tasted it yet. So it's crazy to me that, could we actually see another top 3 pick? We saw Laine and Dubois get traded this season. Could we see another top 3 pick, let alone be a number 2 overall pick, get traded? And, there's rumors saying that, the Rangers are interested and that the Kings are interested. Personally, leave this to the offseason. Secondly, you might want to, trade him to a Western Conference team, not someone that's A, in your division, or B, going to be in your conference, or C, might be competing for a playoff spot for you down the road.
Yeah, it's tough to see. And, being an Oilers fan, McDavid went number 1. And not to say he's had an insanely successful career, but, his career in Edmonton versus Eichel's career in Buffalo, they're 2 pretty opposite things. Eichel last year, if the Sabres found a way to get into the playoffs last year, I'd say Eichel could have won the Hart. He was amazing last year. And this season, he's been, the same old. He's just a very talented player. But it is unfortunate to see, such a talent, not even get a taste of the playoffs. And, hoping that Buffalo can somehow find a way to turn things around.
2 games are rescheduled for May 10th, which is actually 2 days after the original end of the regular season. New Jersey, Philadelphia joins Tampa Bay and Dallas. I think we kind of expected this to happen. Personally, it's not a surprise from me to see the NHL reschedule games beyond the original end date for the regular season. I thought this was going to happen either way.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, earlier we talked about kind of like giving, sort of a grace period between the end of the regular season and the playoffs, just in case this happens. And, already, we're well into the season, a month and a half, but, seeing these games pushed to then, I think, it's a good thing just in terms of, flexibility. Dallas, they're going to be playing so many games up until the end of the regular season. I don't know the specific number, but it was a lot of games in not many days. So I think, we might need to expand, the end date and kind of just be able to move these games, further down the road.
It was announced by the Rangers on Wednesday that their defenseman Jacob Trouba is out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. That's a huge loss for them. We spoke about how Panarin's going to take a leave of absence. So not only do they have a hole up front, but they also have a hole on the back end that needs to be replaced. And also, last week we spoke about the Pionk and Trouba trade and how that kind of worked out for each respective team. And, it'll be interesting to me to see how well the New York Rangers defense will play.
Yeah, I think with New York, early season, even when they had everyone together, things weren't going well. And now, that they're taking away these key players, arguably, their top defensemen. You could say Adam Fox, you could say Trouba. I think it's either one of them. And then obviously I'd say Panarin's their best forward. So it's going to be tough for them. And it's going to be tough, how they're going to rebound from this. Guys like Lafreniere and Capo Caco, they've been able to kind of hide, and the Rangers can still score. However, now they're going to be relied upon, or else the Rangers are going to have a really rough run.
This is not NHL news, but I feel like something relevant since we both live in the Toronto area. Catchers and pitchers reported to spring training for the Blue Jays on Wednesday, and it's been 510 plus days since the Blue Jays have hosted a game in Toronto. And, it's crazy to me to think that we could possibly go 3 full seasons without a game in Toronto.
Yeah, I think, I think hopefully things, by, kind of spring, summer are good enough for the Jays to play in Toronto. However, just with the border and quarantining and all these rules and such, it's going to be difficult. And it is hard to imagine for the Jays, to at least start the season in Toronto. I think that 510 days is going to keep going up. And, I'd love to be going back to the Dome and watching a good Jays game. I think that's just something, I used to like to do, and I've been missing it for sure.
As a business standpoint, I think this is good because right now in Dunedin, they can allow fans in. And there was a report, I think, that came out a few months ago that said, the MLB teams were losing billions of dollars by not having fans in the stands. So at least they're gaining some of this money back by hosting fans in spring training. And the Jays are going to start out their season in Dunedin. So they'll carry this fan capacity into the season is my hope. But yeah, I miss the buzz around the city, whether it's with the Raptors or with the Leafs or with the Blue Jays. There used to be this buzz in the GTA that, ever since the coronavirus pandemic happened, I'm missing that. And there's also this disconnect that I feel. I didn't watch a lot of Jays games last season because, they're down in Buffalo, and along with the buzz and, there's just this disconnect between me and, the team that's ways away and not playing in their hometown.
Exactly. Last season, with the extended wild card rules, the Jays somehow were able to, squeak their way in there. But, the Raptors, you can look at them as a prime example. They went from playing in Toronto, one of the best places to play in the NBA, just a devoted fan base, to playing in Tampa Bay. And, early they started the season 2-8. And for them, they've been a very successful franchise over the last decade. For them to have that bad of a start, really goes to show how much they were missing the fans. They've been able to, adjust and kind of be able to find their groove without the fans. But it does just show, how much of an impact fans have. And playing away from Toronto, these guys, the Raptors, they're staying in hotels in Tampa Bay. It must be really rough just constantly going on the road, whereas other teams, who are used to playing in the States, they can go home and see their families and sleep in their own bed. So it is a disadvantage for the Canadian teams playing, in a league where they're the only one from Canada.
We mentioned earlier about Chicago, you did actually, and I wanted to highlight, 3 of their rookies, or, 3 rookies on their team. Philip Kurashev, he has 9 points in 18 games. Puis Suter has 10 points in 19 games. And Kevin Lankinen, who has to absolutely win the Calder Memorial Trophy, in my opinion, has 2.42 goals against average and a .927 save percentage. So I think Chicago is, riding. This could be the next wave of the next, I guess you could say, Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews of this Chicago team, since, Toews and Kane are getting older.
With Chicago, 6 years ago, they won the cup, but now, we've been able to see the downfall of this team and sort of just, piece by piece, they lose these guys that you're used to seeing wearing Chicago uniforms. And all of a sudden you look at their bottom 6 and you couldn't name one player, but now these guys are stepping up, and these rookies, I think it's a really big thing for the success in Chicago. It's good that it's rookies, not just these random guys. These are pieces that Chicago can sort of, build off of and, have established in their lineup, especially, Kevin Lankinen, the first episode we did, I remember talking about how Malcolm Subban and Colin Delia, that's not going to cut it as an NHL tandem. But now, the success of Kevin Lankin, and he's proven to be like a legit starter throughout his short NHL career so far. And not only the Calder, but, realistically, a Vezina could be, potentially in his future if he keeps this play up. I don't think he wins the Vezina, but I think, just the way he's playing is deservedly to be talking about how good he's been and how good he will be, hopefully, for the Blackhawks' future.
The Pittsburgh Penguins have 5 of their 9 wins in regulation. It's crazy to me that they don't have, let's say 7 of 9 in regulation. And, most playoff games go to overtime, I think. So I think this Pittsburgh Penguins team is kind of built for the playoffs in a way. They're already, in mid-playoff form, and that could either be bad if you look at it because they're peaking too early for the playoffs, or that could be good. They're kind of ramping up for the physicality that's going to come with it. Tristan Jarry, yeah, he's been phenomenal the last 2 or 3 games for the Penguins. So it looks like they're, trending the right direction.
Yeah, it seems that things are back on track. And, you and I, before we started recording, talked about how the Leafs right now, might have to adjust to a completely different style of hockey once the playoffs come around. However, the Penguins, it seems that they're used to, playing these tightly, tight games that, maybe go to overtime, come down to the wire, last couple minutes. It's a 1-goal game. So I think, that's an advantage built off of, the experience that this Penguins team already has. Some of the guys on this team have won 3 cups. With the Penguins. So it's nice to see them turn things around. And like you said, you got to be able to find a way to win these games, and the Penguins are doing so.
Connor McDavid reached 500 career points with an assist on Wednesday night. And it's honestly such a special treat to watch this generational talent step on the ice for a Canadian team. I'm thankful that he got drafted to a Canadian team. So thank you, Edmonton, for, basically screwing Buffalo, because in a sense, it's crazy to think that Buffalo was 1 spot away from picking Connor McDavid. And who knows, maybe the Sabres would be good. Who knows? But it's honestly so much fun to watch him.
Yeah, as a fan of the Oilers, obviously maybe I take him for granted a little bit. But, he's just such a treat to watch each and every night on my TV, when the Oilers are playing. Yeah, it's good to have him on my team. Like you said, with him going to Buffalo, I've had a couple nightmares over the last 5 years about he could have gone to Arizona. They had a high odds that year too. And I couldn't imagine if he was buried there in Arizona, that would be, tough to, find him on cable. But, 500 points. And you look at his first 100 points, it took him around 92 games. But since then, he's, shortened the amount of games it's taken him to get the next 100 each and every time. And he's just so special.
You have to think that he reaches 500 career points sooner than when he did, because, half of his rookie year was out because of injury.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. He went in with Brandon Manning, who ended up playing for the Oilers a few years, after the incident, and took away a big chunk of his rookie season. that ended up making Panarin the Calder winner that year. And, McDavid, that's one trophy he will never have. But yeah, I think, that was a minor setback, but he's been able to play, most of his career since then.
Andrew Mangiapane has been bumped up to the first line ahead of that Wednesday night tilt against the Vancouver Canucks. And he currently has 9 points in 18 games. I think that Mangiapane has been playing, really well to earn that first line ice time in Calgary.
Yeah, you look at Calgary, and they have special guys in their top 6. Obviously, Johnny Gaudreau, Elias Lindholm, Sean Monahan's out at the moment, but he's also solid. They need more guys to step up, and Andrew Mangiapane, has been able to, provide first line production so far in the games that I've seen. He's kind of just a good energy guy. He's got a lot of speed. Kind of knows where to be at the right time, and he has a good shot as well. He knows where to put the puck.
Apparently, in that late game, the Edmonton Winnipeg game last Wednesday, there wasn't much refereeing from what I was hearing on Twitter and Discord. But that kind of signaled that was another achievement in that game. Actually, it was 600 career wins for Dave Tippett. Big congrats to him, and no better way to do it than to do it with a Canadian team like we mentioned.
Yeah, on the same night, actually, Connor, reached 500 career points and Tippett got 600 career wins. And I want to mention this from the Edmonton media. Dave Tippett was asked, how special is it for you and Connor to both reach these milestones on the same night? And Dave Tippett's response was, well, neither of us have a cup yet. And, I just kind of like that, mindset from the coach. He is dialed in and, hopefully this Edmonton team, with McDavid and Draisaitl, it'd be nice to see them make a run in the future.
On Thursday, we learned that Max Domi was relegated to the fourth line against the Nashville Predators. And we go right back to the Max Domi for Josh Anderson trade. And it seems to be another great move by Mark Bergevin. He obviously got crucified when he made the trade. Domi's playmaking ability, decision-making, I guess we could say, I find it quite surprising that he's not in that top six for Columbus, that he found himself on that fourth line.
Yeah, with Columbus, they lost Dubois. I thought Domi was going to potentially have a chance to be a top two center on that team. When he got traded to Columbus, I liked the move for them. I thought Domi could come in and maybe kind of fit Torts' style. I'm not, really, too keen on his two-way game. I'm not too sure about it, but I feel like that's something that he could maybe develop. It's just unfortunate to see him, playing like this in Columbus, although he was able to score a goal on that fourth line, some way, somehow. And another thing, pointing back to the Anderson move, fans crucified Mark Bergevin, and that's something as a sports fan I hate. Right away when a trade comes out and fans declare a winner right away, let these guys play. Let them actually get comfortable with their teams, and then we can decide a winner. I remember 2 years ago at the deadline, Granlund got traded for Fiala, and people thought that was a completely one-sided deal and Nashville was winning. But, Fiala has been able to be, potentially better for the Wild than Granlund has been for the Predators. So, just let things play out. And, right now we're seeing, Mark Bergevin winning another trade.
Joe Thornton is turning back the clock. And I mean, he got reinstated on that first line with Matthews and Marner. And, it's crazy to me to think that it seems like they have a great second line mate, whether it's Hyman or Joe Thornton. And, just the playmaking ability the 41-year-old has, it's like he's turning back to his San Jose days, to his younger days.
Exactly. The last couple seasons in San Jose, Joe Thornton, he's a Hall of Famer. So every once in a while, he's going to, get the puck in the net or make a nice play. However, he was relied upon as, more of one of their ideal top players in San Jose. And that just, at this point in his career wasn't, right for him. And now in Toronto, when he's playing with Matthews and Marner, the defensemen on the other team, they're going to be focused on Matthews and Marner most of the time, which allows for Thornton to, get a little bit more space. And with one of the best playmakers of all time, that's something that you don't want to do.
Who is your MVP? That may be a biased question, but Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid are both going head-to-head for this Hart Trophy. And I'm really excited to see who comes out on top.
I think my MVP at the moment is Connor McDavid. Just because I think, if you took Matthews off the Leafs, they wouldn't be doing as bad as if you took the McDavid off of the Oilers. I think right now those are the two front runners, and things can change. We're about, a third into the season, and, maybe other guys could start to, put themselves in that MVP race. But right now I do think it is a two-man race at this time.
The Penguins allow 3 goals or less in, the win against the New York Islanders. They won 4-1 on Thursday night. And it's, like we mentioned before, it's like they're playing playoff hockey already. They're winning games. They can show that they're good defensively.
Exactly. The talent there, that's never in question, with Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, guys like that. Offensively, the Penguins aren't going to struggle too much. Maybe a slump here every once in a while. But, it's more about the back end, and Pittsburgh in terms of like point of focus, how their defense and goaltending is playing. And early in the season, it was an issue for them. But now, that it's starting to, strengthen up, Jari, should be the starter, I think. He was last year. He had a great season last year, was an all-star. Had a bit of a rough start, but he's kind of turning back, into the goalie that he should be.
Speaking of issues, the Minnesota Wild are facing an issue with their power play. They're currently ranked third worst in power play percentage with 7.7. It's not going well, and I guess I don't know what they could do for a shakeup. I'll be honest.
Yeah, with Minnesota, they have a couple good puck-moving defensemen. I think, Jared Spurgeon's been out of commission for a little bit. I think he's back. I think he helps the power play a lot. Kevin Fiala last season was on a great run, and he's kind of, gone back down to earth a little bit. So just kind of all around a little bit of struggle with that Minnesota power play. And hopefully they can find a way to, get the goals in on the man advantage eventually.
Nashville got shut out 3-0 by Columbus, and we're looking at the Predators at being sellers at the trade deadline. Some of the players on the block include Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, Matthias Ekholm, and I think the only untouchables on the roster are Roman Josi and Pekka Rinne. And Elliot Friedman brought up on Saturday night that Dante Fabro isn't on that untouchable list. So that's kind of surprising because that, basically says that Nashville really isn't looking at Fabro as someone they want to continue into the future with.
Yeah, with Nashville, it was only a couple seasons ago in 2017, they were in the Stanley Cup Finals. And I remember I have a friend who's a Predators fan, and I texted him and I said, do you think Saros could be the starter in the future? And he said yes. And I said, okay, well, if Saros could be a starter, then I think Nashville could be good for a very long time, just looking at their roster at that time. But, you go only 4 years later, and Nashville kind of has a real problem right now. And I do believe that being sellers at the deadline should be what they're doing, because right now, maybe they can squeak into the playoffs every couple seasons. But, with their current roster, I don't think they're a true cup contender. And I think they do need to do a little bit of retooling before they can be back in that, contending role.
We see how dominant Connor McDavid is, but I think credit has to go to his line mates, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and finally, Jesse Puja-Harvey. My question to you is, has Jesse Puja-Harvey lived up to that fourth overall hype, or what does he have to do to live up to that hype?
I think, when he was drafted as the fourth overall pick, people right away were kind of outraged because he was slated to go third. Columbus ended up taking Dubois, and it felt that, Edmonton was getting another like really good talent to build off of. And he had a very difficult start to the league. He ended up going to Finland and regaining some confidence. Now he's back in the league, and he's kind of, playing like a number 4 pick from 5 years ago should be. I think, obviously I don't think he's lived up to number 4 yet. I think he's slowly getting there, but if he can be a solid top 6 piece for this Edmonton team, I think, spending the number 4 pick on him was well worth it.
And I think that his two-way game is getting better as the games go on. I think his defensive coverage is getting really better. I think he's playing good along the boards. And then that kind of defensive game translates into really good offensively. We see on the rush when Connor McDavid generates some space that Puja-Harvey knows that he's going to pass it to him. So he has that drive to go to the net and pop one.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's a very intelligent hockey player, just in terms of like all around. He kind of knows what to do in most situations, and playing with a guy like McDavid, and, credit to Nugent Hopkins as well. It's just a recipe for his success, and hopefully that line can keep, playing that the way they have been so far.
Now, my other question to you was, do you think that McDavid is that type of player to kind of make anyone good, whoever is on his line, kind of like a Crosby and a Gensel in a way?
Yeah, even early in his career, they kind of had that with him. I remember one of his line mates was Anton Slepyshev. And, that's not super memorable of a name. Maybe it dug out of the memories for some people hearing that. But, McDavid has just kind of been that guy where you can throw anyone on his wing and he's still going to produce. But now, Puja-Harvey and Nuge stepping up. It's nice to have, skill alongside of McDavid, but it's not necessarily they need to be putting their second best player on McDavid's line.
And on Friday night, this was actually the second time this season the Oilers have won without a point from their 2 stars, McDavid and Draisaitl. So I think the Oilers have found out what their depth issue is with scoring.
Yeah, losing Clefbaum at the start of the season was tough, but Barry is kind of, grown into this. He's kind of turning back the clock a little bit, to his Colorado days, being somewhat of an elite offensive defenseman again, and solid in his own end as well. Gaten Haas ended up getting the game winner in that Battle of Alberta on Friday. So it's just nice to see, the depth kind of coming along and, not really needing to rely on McDavid or Draisaitl to get on the score sheet to be within, reach of games.
On Friday night, I witnessed that Thatcher Demko was actually on his game against Winnipeg. I think that when Demko is on his game, he seems to be the future of the Canucks. But realistically speaking, to be on your game for, let's say 30, 40 games, depending on how many starts Demko gets, is really hard to do. It's really hard to play that A+ level. So I think that if Demko plays like a B+ level grading, he should be good. And I'm just very excited to see him play for the Canucks in the future.
Yeah, I do think he's the future goalie. I'm not sure what Holtby's contract has in terms of no movement, but I think Holtby might be going to Seattle in the offseason, just as, looking at the tandems where two solid goalies are. But yeah, Thatcher Demko, at the start of the season, he had a little bit of a shaky start. His first two starts weren't amazing, but, now he's kind of, grown back into this comfortable Thatcher Demko that we saw in the playoffs last year, or at least flashes of. So hopefully he can be the starter of the future because, he's a very talented player.
Quickly speaking on that Seattle point there you mentioned, if their tandem is what I think it is, which is going to be Braden Holtby and Jake Allen, I don't think Jake Allen's going to come back to the Montreal Canadiens because they have Caden Primo coming. That is a solid tandem to start out your first season with, because Allen right now, he played phenomenal. He played phenomenal last night in the overtime, stopping various breakaways, 2-pad stack against, it was either Batherson or Tkachuk. And he's been filthy. Great, another great acquisition. By the way, Mark Bergevin got crucified for that because of how much money he gave Allen. But now we see that it really is paying off, and you could make the legit argument of saying that Jake Allen is outplaying Carey Price right now.
Yeah, I think, it definitely is, a conversation. Carey Price is getting more of these marquee starts, I'd say, whereas Allen's kind of getting these off night games. But Jake Allen, he's been as solid, if not better than Carey Price throughout the season, just in terms of, his play in the net. He seems calm. The team plays kind of calm in front of him, and his stats prove that he's been a solid goalie so far.
On Saturday afternoon, right before the game, Nico Kishay got named captain of the New Jersey Devils. And actually, you predicted that 2-3 seasons ago, you predicted that. And so that another prediction by you stands up correctly. Anyway, he becomes the youngest captain in the NHL at 22 years old.
Yeah, Nico was a guy that I kind of fell in love with, before his draft year. And it's just crazy to see. I remember, following him and looking at highlights of him in the Swiss League and in the QMJHL before he was even drafted. And now it's crazy. All of a sudden, he's got a 7-year contract and he's the captain of this team. So, a solid career so far. And I think he was the right number 1 pick just for the Devils team. And hopefully he can become, an elite 2-way center and have Jack Hughes take more of the offensive load.
Mike Babcock was announced on Saturday that he's going to coach at the University of Saskatchewan. He is actually from that area. So to me, this looks like a personal decision to go home, potentially spend more time with family. But let's hope that he took the year off to kind of, reflect on what he did with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I think, this is probably where Babcock is going to, kind of finish his career being at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm not sure where he coached prior to his NHL, but it could be at the University of Saskatchewan just because I know he had some college or university level experience. But, it's nice to see him get another job. But for him to get back into the NHL, I think he just kind of had such a rough, breakup with the Leafs that it's going to be hard for a team to give him another chance. Because I don't think Seattle is going to. That's a vacancy head coach job. But yeah, I think it's nice to see him, going back home and being a coach still.
Well, I think that more opportunities will open up for Babcock to return to the NHL, just because of the nature of some teams in their state and coaching. So take, for example, Nashville. They're really bad, so they could look at firing John Hines, and who's to say that they don't give Babcock a look?
Yeah, just that experience. He has, probably a Hall of Fame resume. He'll probably get in there just for his coaching. So it is tough to see, him kind of on the free agent market in terms of coaching and not getting a job or getting a chance in the NHL.
Jesse Puljujarvi and Ryan Rishaug, Puljujarvi had a media availability. And actually, I tweeted this out with my podcast account, and it got a lot of likes. And so he, during that media availability, Puljujarvi said that he's living in Edmonton in his own. He has bought a golden retriever. He doesn't cook. His girlfriend cooks for him. He prefers to eat, and he actually hasn't changed his stick in 6 years. And what I said, the summary of the tweet was basically that we never see this side of players. It adds to their personality. So when you're a young kid, let's say 7-10 years old, looking up to Jesse Puljujarvi, or, you see this guy on television and he has a dog and, he's having fun with playing hockey, and he shows this personable side of his game and of his life. And, I think that's how you reach new fans is, you have to get players to answer or, be open about what their life is outside of just hockey, grind, practice, pregame routine, whatever it is.
Exactly. I think, Jesse Puljujarvi, his personality is shown so far, and it's just nice to see. I've talked a lot how I love seeing personality in the NHL, and Jesse Puljujarvi, I just want to say, how can you hate the guy? He just lights up the room. He's got a huge smile, and he can provide when he's on the ice and off the ice. He just seems to be a very happy guy always. And it's nice to just see this personality in the locker room.
Doug Armstrong also said that he has 10 or 11 locks for the Canadian Olympic team. That is kind of like, I'm saying that it's, those 10, 11 locks are a mix of modern hockey players, like young hockey players versus the veterans. Cause he did go on record saying that he wants it to be a mixed team. And we mentioned that's kind of going to be like like a mix of North America versus Canada, like the World Cup of Hockey. And I'm just excited to see what the roster is going to be.
Yeah, Doug Armstrong has an easy job in the fact that, he's going to produce a good roster no matter what, but also a hard job in, who he leaves off this team. Canada's talented enough that they could put 2 or 3 teams in the Olympics and all do very well. But, in terms of these 10 or 11 locks, I feel like most fans can kind of gauge who these guys are. It's hard to see McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby being left off this list. But it will be nice to see how this roster kind of makes up, leading more towards the Olympics.
One line combination that would really get me excited is seeing a McKinnon, Crosby, McDavid line. I mean, holy shit. That would get me out of my seat. That would be edge of my seat. Like the amount of speed, skill on that line, on that one line alone could probably that's just unfair at that point.
Yeah, I think the Cole Harbour connection with Crosby and McKinnon is something that I want to see, in the Olympics, them playing together. You see every summer they go, obviously now with the pandemic, they probably were unable to do it this summer, but they go back home to Nova Scotia. They run camps together. They seem to be good pals, the two of them, in the Tim Hortons commercial and such. And it would be nice to see them play, alongside a guy like Connor McDavid for sure.
One rumor that I've heard is that he's some people have been saying that Doug Armstrong is taking a look at Bowen Byram, who's the defenseman for the Avalanche. And I think that Byram should be held off the Olympic roster. It's quite a surprise to see his name being linked to a Olympic roster because he's so young in his career. And I think that he is just too young for the roster. And this would be his second season if he were to make the Olympic roster.
Yeah, I'm going to connect this to the NBA and the, basketball Olympics. It's kind of a tradition for the American roster to kind of have like a rookie on their team. Anthony Davis hadn't played a single NBA game, but he was on the American Olympic roster. So it would be kind of like this. Bowen Byram, I think he's a phenomenal player. And I think, eventually in the future, playing for Team Canada more than a World Juniors level, I think is something that we will be seeing. However, just in a second season, I think there's so many solid defensemen, over him that might have a little more experience.
Stan Bowman seems to be the leading candidate for the Team USA GM job as well. And and actually, I know that we discussed about players being doubtful for the Olympics, but as I read news this past week, I think it actually is in the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, that were signed off by the PA and the NHL, that players are supposed to go to the 2022 Olympics. So I think we will most certainly get NHL players at the Olympics, and I'm very excited to see Finland play. Because Finland, they've been building this amazing. We see the World Juniors. They've been building this amazing hockey program over the last 5 years, and I'm very excited to see how well they perform. I mentioned Stan Bowman, so Team USA, they're going to be another dominant force. Same with Russia. It's going to go back. I'm going to see all of these hockey players that we've been growing up with play at such a high level. It's going to be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, like the Olympics could be shaping up to be one of the greatest of all time, just in terms of, the makeup of these rosters. I think you're still in a period where the guys like, Bergeron, Crosby, they're kind of still able to compete at this Olympic level. So you're getting a mix of veterans and these young guys transitioning into like new age of the NHL. It's just going to be something that, hopefully we are able to get, NHL players at the Olympics. And I think, just for the hockey world, it'd be huge.
Another experiment that the NHL tried doing was having a game at Lake Tahoe during the afternoon, I should say. And the sun ruined the ice conditions. And it actually took 10 hours and 37 minutes to finish the game since they delayed the game. It started at, I think, maybe like 2 p.m. Eastern. And then, they played the first period. Then there were some ruts in the ice. There was bad ice. And obviously the NHL doesn't want to put players at risk. So they decided to postpone it to midnight Eastern time. And just like that, there were records set. There was the record set for, I guess you could say, longest NHL game. There was a record set for Mark Stone's penalty. He came out of the box right at the start of the second period. So that was like a nine-hour penalty, you could argue. And then consequently, the Bruins and Philadelphia game got moved from 3 p.m. to 7:30. And unfortunately, if you have Sportsnet 1, good for you because you were able to watch the game. But if you didn't have Sportsnet 1, you couldn't see the Lake Tahoe game. So, the NHL really, and it got moved from NBC to NBCSN. So, the marketing strategy there, the trying to promote this game really failed in their opinion, in my opinion, on their part.
Yeah, I think just in general, the marketing of this game, probably, or of this set of games, I think, they could have done a better job. I think, in terms of scenic, although the game wasn't able to be played in the daytime, but, the scenery was just a phenomenal feat to see, just kind of getting that ODR style game. Obviously we're aware of the Winter Classics and such. However, those are played at, big stadiums. However, just, along the lake, in this season where, fans aren't really too much of a thing, you're allowed to have these smaller venue things. And I think on paper it was a good idea. However, even though it is, February, Nevada, it is pretty hot there. So it is not surprising to see that the ice conditions, were unable to play in the daytime.
If you were to ask me where Lake Tahoe was, I couldn't tell you it was in Nevada. I thought it was in Colorado. I really did.
I believe Nevada. I'm not 100%. I could be wrong. I'm not too fresh on my American geography. I've never taken a course on it, but I think so. I'm not 100% on it though.
Hold on. It is in Nevada. Yeah, it's in Lake Tahoe is a large freshwater lake in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Well, there you go, people. I thought it was in Colorado because Colorado was, I guess, the home team of that game. So I thought
Vegas. I guess they were the home team, but they were playing Vegas.
Yeah, I know they were playing Vegas, but Colorado was the home team. So in my opinion, like, why would they put if you're gonna schedule a home team, right? Why would you not just put it in like a home? They should just make Vegas the home team. There's confusion there on my part.
No, yeah, I agree. And I think Colorado in terms of temperature would have been a better choice as well.
We say that the NHL really has a condensed schedule, but as a Montreal Canadiens fan, I watched them lose against the rival Leafs, and in a great effort, but a loss against the last place Senators. And that was because they had a full week off. And I guess you don't really say it's a condensed schedule when you can literally have 7 full days off between 2 games for one team. If it's really condensed, then prove it to me by having the team play every other game, or 2 nights in 3 days, or 2 games in 3 days, because that to me doesn't show that the schedule is really condensed in a way.
Yeah, I think, the reason that they set out these week breaks were because in terms of cancellations and postponements, maybe having, a couple days where they could schedule these games. However, the North Division hasn't seen too many problems with their, COVID protocols. So, the 7 days just was that for the Habs. They took a whole week off of playing. And, when you're playing against only teams in your division, every game really does matter that much more. So, going 7 days out, that can really kill your momentum. And, they beat the Leafs, a Saturday ago, and they had a bunch of momentum, and then, 7 days off probably definitely killed some of it.
Sidney Crosby, a player that we've been growing up with, reached his 1,000th game on Saturday. And I think that he, again, would have reached it earlier had he not had those early concussions. So it'll be interesting to see if kind of like, Connor McDavid follows, the same route. And we can make the same argument for him with his injuries, but injuries are a part of the sport nonetheless. Here's just a tad bit of his resume. 3-time Stanley Cup champion, 2-time Olympic gold, a world championship, World Cup. So he's part of the triple gold club. The World Juniors, a 2-time Hart Trophy, 2-time Conn Smythe, a 2-time Rocky Richard, and a 2-time Art Ross winner. Just a phenomenal career. Call it the Hall of Fame. He's only 33 years old, so he still has lots of time left to accomplish, basically anything he wants to.
Mm-hmm. No, first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. Sidney Crosby. I think, when I was younger, Crosby was just like, the face of the NHL. So maybe I neglected it a bit. But now that I'm older and kind of am able to see his career, it really is a phenomenal career. And especially in the modern day NHL, what he's been able to accomplish. And you could make an argument for him being, anywhere between top 10, top 5 all time. He definitely deserves to be, mentioned among the greats.
Another accomplishment that he set out was that he is the first ever Penguin to play all his 1,000 games with the Penguins. And that's just adding the cherry on top to his loaded resume.
Mm-hmm. And I hope he stays in Pittsburgh for the rest of his career. He's just kind of, been so iconic there. And it would be nice to see, him one day be able to skate his last game and look up at the Pittsburgh crowd and then kind of just to, appreciate and, give him thanks for all that he's done.
We saw later that night that Connor McDavid, basically challenged Austin Matthews, because Austin Matthews went off against the Montreal Canadiens. But Connor McDavid basically said, "Hold my beer," and went off against the Calgary Flames after being held off the score sheet on Friday night. So, we could insert that Michael Jordan meme, and I took it personally. But he had a 5-point night. He scored a nutty, an absolute 5-hole goal with no look. Like, man, he is such a treat to watch.
Yeah, he makes it look easy, and it really isn't. I was sitting watching the TV, obviously, Battle of Alberta, that's got to be on the screen. And he had 3 points in the first period, and then just kind of in the second period completely took off. 3 goals, 2 assists. He just had a phenomenal game, and he's, like you said, such a treat to watch. And just every once in a while, he has these kind of special nights where everything goes his way and he gets all the bounces. And, credit to him as a player as well. Not every player can do what he does.
Alex Nadelkovic earned his first career shutout versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's basically solidifying my point, saying that the Canes are legit. They're actually atop of the central standings here, I think. And, I really like how, there is kind of that depth in goal with the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, Peter Mrazek went down, and for most teams, if you lose your kind of clear starter, that's going to hurt your team, especially, if you're in contention. However, Nadelkovic and Reimer have been able to, kind of keep them afloat. And Nadelkovic, I think, he's the goalie of the future. You look, he was on waivers actually earlier this season. I'm surprised he didn't get claimed because he's kind of been, around the Carolina franchise as being, the next guy for a while. So it's just nice to see him get that first shutout. And against a team like Tampa, I think there's no better team that you can get, first career shutout against.
And finally, on Sunday, Trevor Zajac is another member of the Without 1,000 Games Play Club. He recorded that Sunday afternoon against the Washington Capitals. Another player that's been great for the Devils. I think that the Devils can possibly threaten for the playoffs in, the next 2 to 5 years.
Absolutely. Although they ended up losing that game to Washington, I think just their style of play, kind of surprised me. I think, they are perhaps buying into a system. However, the depth lines, they kind of go out there and just try to neutralize the game. And then, when Quinn Hughes, Andreas Janssen, Palmieri, that seemed to be their kind of scoring line, get out there, then, they get these opportunities. But I think the Devils are, playing very solid. And I actually got to see it from my own eyes watching their game on Sunday.
Pierre-Luc Dubois scored 2 goals, one of which was the overtime winner in a comeback victory against the Vancouver Canucks. That was actually a good game because Vancouver started out on them early. They were on the puck early. It seemed like everything was going their way. And then, next thing you know, it's 3-2 for Winnipeg. And Vancouver then ties it up at the end of the third. And it was just a great game, in my opinion. And, it's good to see that Pierre-Luc Dubois is finding success quickly after his return from injury.
Yeah, he came to Winnipeg, got through his quarantine period, and then kind of struggled with injury. Reports came out that he was playing with Scheifele and Wheeler, and I think that's just the best position you can put a new player in. And he came and he thrived in that role. Getting, his first goal was a nice one. And then, the OT winner, obviously, to seal the game. And I just think that was a very solid game, back and forth. It was 2-0 Vancouver, then 3-2 Winnipeg, tied it up, and then Winnipeg ends up winning in the shootout. So just, a very solid game to watch.
David Pasternak hasn't missed a beat one bit ever since coming back from hip surgery. In his last 82 games, including the season and last season, he has 59 goals and 113 points. Just a monster, man. He is, completely shredding up, with the Bruins.
Mm-hmm. I think, Pasternak, he's been like an elite player for, I'd say, 3 to 4 years now. But I think, now, last year, obviously he tied for the Richard. I think, he's one of the most elite goal scorers in the league, and, 59 goals in his last 82 games definitely shows that. And, he's just been doing his thing this season, 2 hat-tricks already.
Before we get to Pegs' predictions, it's time for our, weekly Pagcast power rankings by Zach Hogan. So this is for the North Division. He has the Toronto Maple Leafs first overall, the Jets second place, Oilers third, and Canadiens fourth. So those are the playoff positions. The Flames, Canucks, and Senators are outside of the playoffs. The reason for Montreal's drop, I think, was because of that week off. They lost kind of their mojo. So I think, they don't have another situation like that for the rest of the season. They're constantly playing. So I think that once they get back into the rhythm of playing consistently, that they'll rise up to the charts, maybe be that second, third position. The Leafs are running away with the division. No surprise there. I think the Jets, like we've been mentioning, there's like these tiers that we see. So I think the Jets and Oilers are kind of, 2 and 3 positions there. I think those are good picks right there. And then the Flames outside. Flames, Canucks, and Senators. I think we kind of agreed that those 3 teams are going to be outside the North Division.
Yeah, the Flames have been struggling as of lately. And as an Oilers fan, nothing makes me happier, especially when we got to beat them 2 nights in a row in regulation. But, not a lot of arguments with that standings, but it took him long enough to put the Leafs in that one spot because he had the Habs for the longest time, holding on to it. But I think, now it's established that the Leafs are the best team in that division.
time for Pigs' predictions here. So this is for Tuesday's games, which would be the February 23rd. I have the New Jersey Devils over the Sabres. The Devils play like on Sunday, and they almost beat the Sabres. I think on Friday, they almost came back and won that game. So that I think the Devils are going to beat the Sabres. I have the Pens over the Capitals. It would have been really fitting for Sidney Crosby to hit his 1,000th game against Alex Ovechkin, just because of their rivalry growing up.
Did you see the congratulations video from Ovi?
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was a nice touch that the Penguins did, because I was actually on the Penguins Twitter account.
Yeah, no, you love to see. They had like Fleury and Kessel as well, but it was just nice to see Ovi especially.
And, it's good to see that there is this good camaraderie around the league, that these players that Crosby played against growing up recognize this huge achievement for him.
Mm-hmm. And you don't see that in many leagues. Like Crosby and Ovi have gone head to head for the last 15 years, whereas in the NBA, NFL, maybe there wouldn't be as much mutual respect.
Continuing on with the predictions here, I have the Chicago Blackhawks over the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm actually going to switch my prediction here. Currently, I have the Canadiens over the Senators. I'm going to take a wild card here. I'm going to say the Senators over the Canadiens. I'm going to go with the Red Wings over the Predators and Oilers over Canucks.
Yeah, you threw a curveball going against the Canadiens. Maybe I'll throw one as well. I think, the Blackhawks have been playing solid. Blue Jackets have been okay. I'll take the Blue Jackets, though. I just think, maybe a little bit of a defensive game. I think Chicago might not be able to play that kind of style. I'll take the Penguins as well over the Capitals. Capitals have been playing okay. Against New Jersey, they had a great third period, but the first and second were a little shaky. I'll take the Predators over the Red Wings, even though the Predators have been struggling. I think I just, like my odds going against the Red Wings. I'll take the Habs over the Senators. They lost in overtime. I think they're going to, go over the film and, bring the right mindset tomorrow night. I'll take the Sabres. I'll take the Sabres over the Devils. It's just, a little bit of bias because, Sabres household. And then I'll take my Oilers over the Canucks as well.
Well, that concludes it for another lengthy edition of Down to the Wire. Thank you again, Nolan Thode, for joining me on this episode.
It's always a pleasure.